Well, my next guest says that economic growth is actually a much better predictor of who will win the presidential election than just looking at the unemployment rate. And he is Scott Garliss, the editor of the Stansberry NewsWire. Scott joins us now. Scott, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So, Scott, you've been doing a data dive with your team at Stansberry Research. What did you discover?
So what we discovered was when third quarter GDP growth is 3% or greater, the incumbent in the White House tends to get reelected. Conversely, if third quarter GDP growth is 2% or less, say it goes into contraction territory, the incumbent in the White House tends to get kicked out.
So, I'm thinking the folks at the White House and the Trump administration are going to find a lot of comfort in that right now. But you extrapolated the data going forward and you found something different. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so what we found was when the incumbent gets kicked out of the White House, we looked at the data from on a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and 4 year return basis. The market tends to do better and return more over that 4 year period than if the incumbent gets reelected. Now, on the front end, the returns are better for the incumbent staying in, but as it goes out over time, the returns get better for the incumbent getting kicked out.
And how does that break down by party? I mean, does it matter if you go from a Republican to a Democrat or a Democrat to a Republican, or you just get a new candidate in the White House altogether? How does party play into all of this?
It actually worked out that it's they're better returns if a Democrat comes into office for the first term than if a Republican stays in there. But again, it was a bit surprising because when people think of Democrats, they think of tax and spend. Those are the typical. So you think taxes are going to hurt economic growth and they're going to slow things down. But again, that Democrats, apparently the market does a lot better under a Democratic president than it does under a Republican president.
And we've seen in the last couple of days ahead of the election, we saw people writing about the Obama years versus the Trump years, especially when it comes to the economy. And actually, GDP growth in the last 3 years of the Obama administration wasn't very different than the first 3 years of the Trump administration. I think it hovered right around 2.5, 2.6%. So, what does that tell you about how we can look forward to a new administration, if that's indeed what we get?
Yeah, so I think that is what we're going to get. Obviously the coronavirus has caused some hiccups in the system. We saw crazy contraction in the second quarter, and we're seeing crazy growth in the third quarter. But that's going to even out over time, and we're going to go back toward that 2% growth. And so what we have is it's called a Goldilocks environment where you have low growth and low interest rates. And the sector that really benefits from a lot of this is technology, because technology helps companies become more efficient. Uh, Simply put, by using more technology, they need to employ less people so they can get better margins out of their business.
Scott, I think one thing that's interesting to me is that you mentioned the connection between economic lockdowns in the second quarter being part of the cause that we saw a decrease, right? But we're already seeing, and we didn't see that in the third quarter, but now in the fourth quarter, we are beginning to see an increase in cases. So if we get more lockdowns in the fourth quarter, we're certainly not on a glide path here.
Yeah, so we're seeing some very interesting stuff develop. Germany and France just imposed some month-long restrictive measures. They weren't as severe as people thought they were going to be, but still, they're asked. Like France in particular is asking people not to go out of their house unless they have to, and they have to produce papers to prove why. That could be sort of the tip of the iceberg. Other countries see this and like, you know what, we should do the same thing. It's a responsible thing to do. Europe has cases, I believe they're right around 250,000 new cases are popping up daily for Europe as a whole. The US, conversely, we're 80,000-ish, I think. But the concern is that that continues to rise. The US might have to do something. Now, if we see a switch in office, it'll be easy for the new party to say, you know what, it's the last guy's fault. We got to do a lockdown now. I think if we don't see a switch in office, I think the people that are in charge are going to be hesitant to do a lockdown because they saw the economic damage that was done before. They're going to try to do sort of a controlled, let's shut down these pockets and these pockets, but not shut down everything.
Yeah, and it's a tough line to walk indeed. Well, Scott Garliss, thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Thanks for watching. I'm Jessica Stone.